The allegations against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and the Centene Hope Scandal are actually pretty serious, according to four federal prosecutors. These former federal prosecutors told the Herald Times that at least 8 different federal charges, from theft of government funds to money laundering, could be investigated related to the federal funding that passed through the Hope Florida Foundation. That is the foundation that is run by Casey DeSantis. Now, those statutes could carry sentences of decades in prison if the federal government decided to actually investigate. And that, unfortunately, is a very big if. Well, okay, but how strong is your case? Turns out, might actually be really strong. These former federal prosecutors who worked a collective 86 years for the Department of Justice, they no longer work at the Department of Justice because, well, I mean, look at who runs it now, Kash Patel. But these experts have come from both sides of the aisle, by the way. And so this is not just like a witch hunt going after Ron DeSantis or anything like that. In fact, a Republican is one of the ones who's leading the charge against Ron DeSantis. So now these federal prosecutors include an ex-FBI agent who became an assistant U.S. attorney, former leader of the department's fraud section, a former head of narcotics for the Justice Department, who helped craft the government's money laundering statutes, and an ex-deputy chief of the department's asset forfeiture and money laundering section. So there's a lot of cumulative experience here. And they're all looking at this case going, wow, yeah, there's some criminality here. Okay. All four of them said that based on the information that has come out about this $10 million that was stolen from Medicaid and pushed into a private charity, and then from that charity given to the, parts of the DeSantis administration. Yeah. There's ample evidence here for the Department of Justice to launch an investigation. Once you have Medicaid funds involved, quite frankly, said Charles Blau, a federal prosecutor that ran a money laundering task force in Miami, funds belong to the state and not to the charity or political action committees. So I would think they would be ripe for investigation for money laundering. Again, to kind of recap what's going on here, because I don't think this story's been getting enough attention here, but last year, Florida quietly settled with the Medicaid giant Centene. It's a private company for about $67 million. They were caught overbilling on prescription drugs in the state's healthcare program for low-income Floridians. Now, as part of that settlement, the state agency for healthcare administration received $57 million and directed Centene to send the other $10 million as part of the settlement to the Hope Florida Foundation. That is a state-created charity that purports to support an initiative spearheaded by Casey DeSantis to get Floridians off of government aid. Funny way of doing that, right? Oh, yes. So government money that would have went to people's health care instead went to a private charity that pushes to get people off of government money, but they're taking government money. Very interesting. Now, the charity ended up sending 2 $5 million donations to 2 nonprofits. Those groups then contributed at least $8.5 million to a political committee that was led by DeSantis's then chief of staff, James Uthmeier. So, oh, that's weird. Now, the group spent that money to oppose last year's ballot initiative to legalize recreational cannabis. Uthmeier's committee then later sent a $10.5 million donation to the Republican Party of Florida and an additional $1.1 million to DeSantis's political committee. Wow. DeSantis, Uthmeier, and other state officials are claiming that this $10 million was not Medicaid money. No, it was just a gift. It was a separate charitable donation made by Centene because they felt so bad about, defrauding the state that they gave an extra gift. The problem is that this was not part this was part of the settlement, which means that money, that $10 million, should have gone back into the state's coffers because, again, it is public money, but it didn't. So that's what's going on here. Now, what are the potential crimes then related to this? Well, there's about 8 of them. Here we are: mail fraud, wire fraud, theft concerning programs receiving federal funding, theft of government money or property, healthcare fraud. Yes, which is what Florida seems to be known for, Florida politicians specifically, like Rick Scott, conspiracy to commit offense or to defraud the United States, conspiracy to commit mail fraud, and of course, money laundering. These are very, very serious crimes, by the way. I mean, we're not talking about something that's like, oh, that's not all that serious, witch hunt, blah, blah, blah. No, this is serious. It's a lot of money. Now, that said, DeSantis and Uthmeier, who is now the Attorney General of the state, are immediately denying the charges. They have been denying this all along. DeSantis spokesperson Brian Griffin called this a false narrative. Once again, the Tampa Bay Times is pushing a narrative for clicks over facts. Your activism knows no bounds. Remember, this came from a Republican, a Republican congressperson is like, wow, this looks like fraud. We should investigate this. Uthmeier's spokesperson Jeremy Redfern also called this narrative nonsense. I'm sure your hand-picked starved for attention former prosecutors told you everything you wanted to hear. But unfortunately for your narrative, the actual law enforcement agencies are not entertaining the state representatives' unhinged conspiracy theories. Look, there is a bit of a point there. He says the actual law enforcement agencies are not looking into it. Not because this is a conspiracy theory, but because law enforcement at the federal level is now being overseen by con artists and grifters. Okay? Like the FBI, Kash Patel. Okay? They're no longer credible organizations being run by political appointees that are going to completely ignore all of this stuff because they work for Donald Trump. Okay? And Donald Trump currently is a bit of an ally to Ron DeSantis. Or at least they're getting along. And as long as that's the case, the FBI or any of these the Department of Justice are not going to look into any of this. But the reality is they stole from Medicaid and then paid themselves. That's it. Uthmeier's signatures are all over these transactions. There is a smoking gun there. Text messages Andrade obtained and shared with the Herald Times showed the foundation had wired $5 million to one of the nonprofit organizations days after the donation. So here's that. Notice of wire transfer, $5 million wired from the Hope Florida Foundation to an account ending in the, obviously it's redacted information, but there it is. That is a text message from Save Our Society from Drugs Executive Director Amy Ronhausen on October 22nd, 2024 to Hope Florida Foundation attorney Jeff Aaron. So this is one of those nonprofits, that were given the money. Now, one of the former prosecutors, Scott Newton, a former FBI agent, said that in light of the evidence that they have, quote, the defense would have a difficult burden in defending the timing of two nearly verbatim purported grant requests and showing that the series of subsequent transfers were not made to conceal fraud involving the diversion and conversion of tax dollars for personal political benefit. He added that a federal prosecutor investigating these allegations could easily conclude the Centene settlement proceeds were Medicaid funds, and then investigate whether the subsequent series of transfers of millions of dollars constituted a scheme to defraud. Yeah, well, here's the thing. If we had a real justice system in this country, then yeah, these people would be in a world of trouble. But we don't have that anymore. Florida is ground zero for defrauding Medicare and now Medicaid and getting away with it. I don't know, Rick Scott. Okay, Senator Rick Scott. As much as I would love to see the people get in trouble for this, we all know that right now it won't be investigated. And not only will it not be investigated, as long as Trump's in charge, I have a feeling that this is going to be repeated all across the country. That you're going to have people like Ron DeSantis in positions of power in different states, yes, red states probably, they're going to look at this and go, well, if he can get away with it, I can too. Because the government no longer is really looking into real fraud. Oh, what happened to Doge? Doge was never going to look at fraud. Not real fraud. They're going to make up fraud in order to try to find ways to gut the government. And that's exactly what they did. And what they'll continue to do, even though Elon has stepped away from this. It's basically a free-for-all for Republicans to steal taxpayer money. And that's exactly what happened here. I mean, how did we get to this point? Well, we got it because we allowed the robbers to take over. No surprise that we're being robbed. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.